Yo, what up everybody? It's Tuna. In today's video, I wanted to show you guys some hidden tech that is not really well known. However, with this tech, you can get 2 additional projectiles on pretty much any attack build for pretty cheap at the moment. And in general, quite easy actually. It's much easier than I thought and much easier, than much people think. Let's have a look. As you can see here, the Deadly's Lupine Charm, which is a skills fire and additional projectile, is really expensive and it's on the rise too. Of course, people want these. They're, very rare. It's a weight of 50, and you can't really get them very easily, right? So yeah, Deadeyes are going to be stacking these if possible, but I'm here to tell you guys that there's actually an alternative, and the opportunity cost on this is pretty low, and you can actually do cool things with it on top of the fact that it also gives you projectiles. So how do you do it? That is through this tincture. So this tincture essentially gives you weapon attacks fire 2 additional projectiles if you've been hit recently. The condition, of course, is you have to be hit recently, but you can actually trigger a hit on yourself pretty easily on bow builds in general. So yeah, this tincture you can buy for, at the moment like 100C. Of course, the price might vary, but getting 2 additional projectiles for this cheap is pretty damn good. Of course, with the condition of hitting yourself, right? But so you might ask yourself, so how do you hit yourself reliably? It's actually pretty damn easy on bows, because bows have access to Mana Forge 0. Mana Forge 0, if you guys know, it's broken, right? If you get Mana Forge 0, you can put it in a 4-link, and it's going to be, pretty much your traditional Frenzy Mana Forge 0 setup. However, then you use Cast on Critical Strike, and you want to trigger Forbidden Rite of Soul Sacrifice. You need to have the transfigured version of Forbidden Rite, because with the normal version, you would actually, basically, it might kill you. So with the Forbidden Rite of Soul Sacrifice, rather than killing you, because the base damage of it is based off of your energy shield, which on Deadeyes is usually around 40. The base damage of this is going to be around 16, which is at the level 1 gem. It's going to be an average of 16 damage, plus 18.5, and that's going to equal about 34 chaos damage per trigger. And you're going to link that to your just normal, Mana Forge 0 cast on crit setup. And every time this procs, which is, more often than once every 4 seconds, you don't need to have life tap on this setup, because you don't actually need it to proc that much. But every time this procs, essentially, it procs the hit on your character, which means that it triggers this tincture. You're going to get 2 additional projectiles, and you're going to get that for 4 seconds, which is what recently is. Essentially, as long as this setup triggers once every 4 seconds, you'll get those 2 additional projectiles. Pretty damn cool, because, essentially, you don't have to actually buy those 3 very expensive charms. You can also potentially get like a decent implicit on the tincture, like all damage can shock, and maybe a nice suffix too, right? You can afford it, of course. But next, I wanted to show you the additional benefits that you can get from going Maji, because Maji doesn't only give you, it doesn't only give you the tincture, like, which would be the charms equivalent, right? But it also gives you the opportunity to scale other things like your flasks. And if you're using a Dying Sun, and you're using Nature's Concoction, which is one of the notables on Maji, you can get the 30% increased effect of your flasks, right, that are adjacent to your tincture. Essentially, what that means is that you only need 20% increased flask effect to get 1 additional projectile from your Dying Sun. And then on top of that, the Dying Sun is also gaining a ton of charges every time you hit enemies, because of the first line that you see on the Nature's Concoction notable. So essentially, it's going to give you a lot of flask sustain. It's going to have it's going to have your Dying Sun up much more than you normally would have it. And then for an extra, 20% flask effect, you can get an additional projectile on top of that. So that means that with the tincture and with this notable allocated while using Dying Sun, you're going to be getting a total of 3 projectiles. So yeah, you might think, how do you get the 20% increased flask effect? It's generally much easier than you think. Of course, you can always go for the micro distillery. But micro distillery, there's an opportunity cost there, in that, you have to, of course, craft it. And it's generally a little bit harder to craft a belt like this than it is to just buy, something that somebody has mass crafted, like a Stitch of Vice or a heavy belt or something like that. And, it also, if you're a juicer, it replaces your headhunter or whatever else. But, getting the extra flask effect is actually not that hard, because all you have to really invest is an extra 3 points, to grab a flask cluster that's going to give you a 10% here. As you can see, it's circled. And we generally already path through Primal Spirit at the start of the passive skill tree, because it gives us, like, strength and int. On top of that, it gives us a bunch of percent mana, be able to, basically scale up your mana pool. And yeah, in general, it's just like pretty good value to grab that node. You get an extra 20% flask effect right there just by investing 3 additional points for 1 projectile, which is, you know, pretty much equivalent to what we were investing in the previous league to get 1 projectile with the tattoos. You know, you could just see it that way. You're getting 1 extra projectile on your Dying Sun because you're getting a total of 50% with the Nature's Concoction as well as the tincture, right? So another thing you could actually do is, you know, I don't really recommend this to everybody, of course, because flasks are just insane, but you have the option here as well, of course, to take an extra flask off. And, you know, if you are actually allocating endurance sufficient, if you take 1 flask off, you will be gaining 1 additional projectile on top of the already projectiles that you were getting, because this is buffing your tincture, which was giving you 2 projectiles. So every 50% increased effect of your tincture is going to give you 1 additional projectile. So if you have, you know, 75% increased effect, you remove 1 flask, it's going to be giving you an additional projectile. And if you remove 2 flasks, then it's going to be giving you a total of 3 additional projectiles. If you wanted to just go for like a really crazy projectile heavy build, you can actually, you know, you can actually manage to get a ton of projectiles this way. There's going to be 2 additional projectiles from your tincture and 3 additional projectiles from the fact that you are gaining, you know, you're losing 2 flasks, and then 1 additional projectile from your Dying Sun on top of the 2 that it already gives you. So it ends up being quite crazy the amount of additional projectiles you can get through this setup. But of course, the opportunity cost is that you are losing charms. There's some really cool stuff that you can get on charms, such as, you know, wall chain and whatnot. But I think this is something that you should actually consider if you were one of those people that was planning on just going for 3 additional projectiles, you know, on the Primalist Ascendancy, because it's pretty equivalent in a way to what you were getting before, even just if you don't go for anything crazy. You know, if we scroll back to here, you're getting 2 additional projectiles from the tincture alone and 1 additional projectile from the Dying Sun for pretty much, you know, the equivalent opportunity cost than if you were to go for the charms instead. So in general, I feel like actually one of the few cases where I would ever go Maji over Primalist. Of course, you do lose the backpack, and the backpack is really nice. I've been using mine, you know, to put my maps in there and to roll my maps and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, overall, I feel like this is valid for people that actually want to have those additional projectiles, but possibly, you know, don't want to invest a total of 25 divines per charm. So yeah, in general, I think this is pretty good tech and something that had to be shared with you guys. And of course, I hope you have enjoyed this video and that this information was valuable to you guys. And if you find any tech, or you know, if of anything, you know, I'd appreciate it if you like reached out. I'd love making these videos for you guys and just bringing all the info of the crazy stuff that we're able to find in the league. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the video. I hope to see you guys again soon. Peace out, everybody.